Hi, everyone. Hi, Kat.
Hi.
Hello. All right. Well, we've got people trickling in. I don't want to take up too much time. I want to be mindful. We will get started. Welcome everyone to Women Crush Music. Um, this is our New York and Boston webinar tour stop. So, if you tuned into our showcase, you saw that, and today is our really cool webinar. So, thank you so much for joining us. Please introduce yourself in the chat. As I was saying, drop social media so we can all connect and continue this outside of the presentation. But we have a really great webinar topic for you today. And just a quick note about us, if you are new to Women Crush Music, we are a nonprofit arts organization that creates communities through events like this. And we want to keep building that for singer-songwriters, women industry professionals. So we are really glad that you all are here and can take something away from this, hopefully, to apply to whatever it is you're doing. So thank you. So we have two presenters today from Elektra Music Group. So I am going to hand it over to them. I'll let them introduce themselves, talk a little bit about themselves if they would like, and then get right into it. If you have questions, please drop them in the chat. We will be monitoring that and we'll have time at the end. And same thing for as we go, I will just monitor that. And if we need to jump in and answer a question, that's fine, but utilize that chat for sure. So I'm really thrilled to introduce Caterina and Taya from Elektra Music Group. I'll make sure you guys can share screen, and I think you can, and take it away. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Taya, you want to go first?
Yeah.
Say hi.
Sure. And I think this is good too now. There we go. Okay. Hi, you guys. How's it going? It's so nice to be here today. And thank you so much to Women Crush for having us. We were really thrilled when we met you guys and then to just hear about all the different events that you guys host. I personally was really excited as an artist and songwriter as well outside of work just to hear that this organization existed, and I'm really excited to participate in some of the future events. But yeah, my name is Taya. I'm originally from the Bay Area in California. I don't know if we have anybody else from there on here right now. And I'm living right now in New York and working with Kat and the rest of our team at Elektra Music Group.
Thank you. I'm Caterina Nasr. I'm originally from Houston, Texas, but I also, like Taya, I'm based out of New York. And I've been at Elektra now for 2 years. So Elektra Music Group, just a little bit about our structure. So basically we are underneath the major entity that is Warner Music Group. But underneath Elektra, we have a few label names, such as Elektra Records, Fueled by Ramen, and Roadrunner Records, as well as a few other imprints and JVs. So it's kind of a catch-all underneath the name Elektra Music Group, but we have a few sort of different labels within the larger name. So I do mostly A&R work for Elektra Records and Fueled by Ramen. Roadrunner is the heavier rock, heavier metal side of Elektra. So I'm focused more on the pop and rock side of things. So we're just gonna get right into it. We already said who we are, but
Yeah, that part's done. Basically, Kat is an A&R manager. I'm an A&R research analyst, and we'll get into a little bit more of what that means, but it's essentially, I'm kind of like the first touch. So looking for artists all around the globe using data and other network resources, browsing, we'll get into all of that. And then Kat is also on the scouting side, but then moving forward with the artist, once they sign to the label, she's doing a ton of creative and business branding type work with them. And I guess another quick intro. I wish I could do like a show of hands or something, but how many people, I'm curious how many people know what A&R actually stands for? Because I know, I see one hand, I see some like, okay, cool, a lot of hands. I know I personally, I started at Elektra about a year ago, and before that, I've been a songwriter and an artist as well, but I didn't have a ton of industry experience, and it was actually, I think I only really came to understand what A&R meant maybe a couple months before I landed in the job, and that's when I kind of realized, wow, this is really interesting, and it's something that as an artist, it's super important to understand. So as it looks like many of you guys already know, A&R stands for artists and repertoire, and the role of the A&R department within a label is to scout and sign artists and then act as their label side manager. So just guiding them, setting and achieving creative and business goals, and partnering really closely with the artist. And we thought it would be useful to just kind of take you guys through our A&R process to give an understanding of how artists are being discovered in kind of the digital world, especially with where we're at right now, given everything going on. Give a few examples of Elektra Music Group discovery stories, so some of the artists that we've found recently and started working with. And then lastly, talking a little bit about the A&R and artist relationship and what that actually looks like once an artist does sign. Cool, so first up, artist discovery. As I'm sure you guys know, songs are everywhere. It's almost silly to say out loud, but as A&Rs, we want to make sure that we're monitoring all the different channels that songs can come through. And so we're thinking a lot about where trends start, where people post music, where people share music, where they consume. And it kind of breaks up into these key buckets that we're looking at, which is streaming platforms, social platforms, live concerts, not quite as much right now, but there's still a bit of it happening with Twitch and Instagram, etc. TVs and movies, so in sync, and then lastly, word of mouth. And in our day-to-day work, we try to build systems that help us monitor all of those different homes for songs. So the first, which is kind of the bucket that I focus on the most, is the data side. As you guys know, all of the streaming platforms and many of the social platforms have a ton of data, and as a label, we try to tap into that data to keep a close eye on anything that might be growing or gaining traction in different parts of the world. We also use our A&R network, so other managers who we might know, publishers, artists we've worked with, friends, etc. All of these things are tools that we'll use to try to keep a close eye and ear on what's happening in different music scenes around the country or even around New York. And then lastly, good old-fashioned browsing. This one is inevitable. I mean, how could you not browse all the time if you're somebody who loves music? But just scrolling through TikTok, shamelessly scrolling through TikTok, checking out different blogs and the usual stuff. And then once we have identified a song, or we maybe see something where we think, oh, this is really interesting, it could be something that one day we would want to bring onto Elektra. There are a few different buckets that we look at to try to decide, is this person the right fit? Is this artist and their music the right fit for Elektra and what we stand for? And so the first of those is growth. This is definitely something that I focus on when I'm doing sort of the research and the data side. It's not necessarily, is the artist going viral? I know that's kind of one of those things people ask a lot. They're like, oh, how can I go viral? What can I do to go viral? Like, that seems like the way to do it these days. And I really want to reiterate right now that going viral is not the only way that we discover artists at all. I would almost say at Elektra, we favor this kind of slow build, like the example that you're seeing on the bottom here. I'm trying to see, yeah, this one down here. So like, we're looking a lot of the times for a slow build where maybe an artist releases one song every month or every few months. And as each new song releases, they gain a new set of fans. They gain the fans on other platforms. It's more than just one song on Spotify or one song on TikTok. A lot of the time, we're really just looking for slow improvement over time. So really like to tell people it doesn't have to be one explosive thing. Obviously, that's great if it happens, but we're tracking in both categories of growth. We also are looking for an authentic brand. So that's something that people talk about a lot. It's your digital presence and how can you present yourself in a way that will catch someone's eye. And how I like to think about it, and I think how Kat likes to think about it too, though I'll let her jump in at any point, but is really we just want to see who the person is. It doesn't have to be some crazy thing we've never seen before. It doesn't have to be polished and perfect. We just want to know that the person who we're going to be partnering with and working with has a strong sense of self, and that they're comfortable sharing that with the world, whether that's in like a shy and timid and quirky way, or in an outgoing and loud and bubbly way. Like it can run the spectrum, but that's what we're looking for. And Chloe Moriondo, one of our artists who Kat works really closely with, is a perfect example of that. She just like exudes charisma, and I don't know, I just like her. Like, I've actually never met her because I don't work with her closely like Kat does, but when I see her online, I'm like, I get her. I want to be her. I want to like hang out with her. I want to get pizza with her. So that's really important to us. Kat, do you have anything to add on that one?
No, I just, everything you said, I think it's just something you can't quite pinpoint. I think there's a misconception that you need to be like outgoing, crazy, and all of that, but I think some of the most endearing artists are the soft-spoken people, and it's just about your story and communicating it in a way that's very you. And I think Chloe's a great example of somebody that has really grown up in front of our eyes. When I first found her, she was 15. She just turned 18 last week. So she's just really blossomed as a person, and being very vulnerable, I think, with your audience is super key. So I think just being yourself, like Taya said, and not being afraid to talk about you and who you are and your story, not just through your songs, but through your social media.
Yeah, and I'd also add that this rings true even for songwriters. So I know some people here might have their own artist projects. Some people might just be aspiring songwriters and staying specifically within that realm. But I feel like right now is the era of the songwriter, and there are so many songwriters who are seeing just rising to the top, who are great collaborators and also have their own identity. Like, I think about like Julia Michaels or Ed Sheeran and all these people who are doing it. And they too, like, it's always understated, but just a true voice that comes through in all of their work, and staying consistent to that voice on social media and picking and choosing the things that fall within your personal brand and saving the things that are outside of your personal brand for other artists or for other times, I think is really helpful and really important. And then the next thing we're looking for is a sense of a long-term vision. So it's always really great when you sit down with an artist and you ask them where they see themselves in 5 years, or what they see happening next, and they can tell you, I want to be like this, and this artist, or I want to have accomplished these 4 things, or I want my next album to be a concept album about bugs, whatever it might be that makes you stand out and shows the people who you're going to be working with and collaborating with that you're running the show and that you know where you want to go. That's really powerful. And then lastly, a connected audience. And this is something that is part art, part science. On the data side, we do look at followers and engagement across the different social channels, but we're actually not as concerned about the number of followers. It's more about how people are interacting with you. So I think Miley Cyrus is a great example. She had so many people tuning into her live streams every day. We obviously all can't be Miley Cyrus, but I think everyone can share that same authentic moment with their fans, and have the people who follow them be people who actually care about them, and not putting too much energy into just catching random things, and instead just really focusing in your online presence on your music and on things that are adjacent to your music is a big help. Anything you want to add on this one, Kat? All good?
No, I think it's great.
Cool. So now just jumping into a few specific examples from Elektra. And by the way, there will be time to ask questions at the end. So if we're going really fast, don't worry, there'll be time. Cool. Okay, so the first one, Tones and I. This is an artist I'm sure a lot of you guys are aware of. When she first came onto Elektra's radar, it was actually through research, which isn't always the case. A lot of the time, the first way we find something is through a friend or a blog or whatever it might be. But in this case, Tones and I's song, Johnny Runaway, was starting to show up in Australia. And we were seeing that some certain cities and smaller towns in Australia were really listening to this song a lot. And so we started to look at her and listen to her music. And then we heard Dance Monkey, which of course, right away, everybody heard it and was like, okay, this is serious. We need to be paying attention to what's happening here. And as soon as it came out, that song just was a hit in Australia right away. But what was especially interesting to us was seeing how it crossed over into Europe. And at that point, one of our A&Rs, Johnny, who's not on with us right now, actually flew out to Australia, and the rest is history.
And then we kind of wanted to talk about a few other stories that merged sort of the research side of things and just the pure discovery, you know, finding something that we love and believe in side of things. And I came across Chloe before I was at Elektra. I found her on YouTube. Some of you may know her from her Livia on Rose cover from YouTube a few years back, where she looked a lot different. She had like freckles and a much rounder face and these big round glasses and a yellow kind of bedroom wall that she still has today. But I just remember watching that video and just really being taken aback by her and feeling like a special kind of connection to what she was doing, and followed her on YouTube for a bit as she continued to sort of grow her follower base, and ended up meeting her manager and talking with them and inking a deal with her last fall when she was still a minor, which was a whole process. We got to go to the court and have a lawyer and all these things that you don't have to have when someone's over 18. But she's a really great example of, you know, someone who didn't come in necessarily having a bunch of songs, but had a ton of potential. And we just really saw what she could become rather than what she was right then and there. And I've been working with her on the A&R side, helping her with her songs since about January. So we've put out 2 singles, a song called Manta Rays and a song called I Want to Be With You, which is the album artwork's right here, which were both co-writing sessions with producers I matched her with, and we've been continuing to write and work on her debut album, which will come next spring. So it's been a huge roller coaster with her, but she's really blossoming into special artist and was discovered just via YouTube. And then another band that I helped sign was a band called the band CAMINO, who are from Nashville, Tennessee, originally Memphis, but are based in Nashville. And their story is pretty crazy too. My friend showed me the band CAMINO back home in Texas. We were in her car and she played me a song called 214, and I loved it. And I had, you know, it was a few weeks before I started working at Elektra, and I brought it in, and you know, it took a few months to get people to kind of hear me out on how great I thought they were. And then it started to kind of show up on research, and it was kind of the perfect storm of things. And they were doing, you know, amazing shows, and I ended up seeing them live. They're also a great example of like how a live show can change a band's sort of trajectory. And I saw them live at a venue here in Brooklyn, and just automatically saw how the audience was reacting in a way that normally in that venue, people are kind of too cool for school, and everyone was sort of singing every word and very impassioned and excited. And I saw how the girls, you know, were taking pictures with them and singing the lyrics, and it just all sort of felt like this world that was kind of building around them. So for them, it was the fans and the show. And for Chloe, I would say it was just watching her grow on YouTube and seeing her sort of blossom in front of everybody's eyes. And then for Tones, it was just like the sheer reaction to her music and her unique story. She went from like busking in the streets in Australia to like a major pop artist. So I think all 3 of these are sort of cool discovery story examples that are kind of birthed from different places, but all ended up in the Elektra family.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to add to that we had talked about as we were kind of prepping for this is one thing that stands out to me and that stood out to me when I started at Elektra is that almost all of the artists who have ended up on this label and on, I think, a lot of labels are things that the label has found, or that somehow it has appeared on their desk or it's been sent to them, rather than it being sent directly from the artist. And I talk to a lot of friends who are artists right now who are saying like, oh, what's the best way to send demos? Where should I submit? Who should I email? What should I do? And I actually just wanted to offer the piece of advice, which is like any time that you're planning to take into hunting down somebody's email or figuring out a sneaky way to get demos in front of somebody, I would recommend taking that time and putting it into building a following on Instagram or building a following on TikTok or making really high quality YouTube content. Because A&Rs are receiving so many demos and so many things that are constantly getting sent to them that it's really hard to differentiate. And so one of the ways that people in the business end up differentiating is by seeing how many different channels it's come up on. So did it come up from 2 friends, 1 friend? Is it coming up on research? Is it coming up on my For You page? Like, the more times we're seeing it in different places, the more it's like, oh, I can't ignore this anymore. And so that's one piece of advice that I wish I had gotten a long time ago, because I wouldn't have wasted time stalking people's emails and doing creepy things like that. Cool. Kat, I hand it back
So
to you.
we kind of wanted to get into what the A&R's role is once, you know, an artist is signed and once they start working directly with the artist and the artist team, and kind of give you guys an idea of sort of what I do on a daily basis. So the A&R is an artist, label side manager, and champion. They act as the liaison between the artist and each of the label departments. So the way I kind of see it is an A&R's role is sort of managing all the music, whether that's, you know, the demos we have, the finished songs we have, if the song's in the middle of being sort of creatively fleshed out, we're kind of overseeing the sonic vision and overseeing where the sound is developing, where it's going, how an album's going to sound, how an EP is going to sound, what's the next single. You know, a huge part of the job is features, figuring out, you know, is it worth our artists to hop on this song? Do we need a feature on this song? Who makes sense for it? And just kind of sort of piecing together the whole vision of the music. So that's everything from song creation, album creation, brand development, marketing strategy. And I would say those final 2 sort of are always kind of in play when we're making the songs, but it's the marketing person, our product manager, that normally kind of takes the reins on the rest of the project once the music is finished. So we basically oversee the music making from beginning to end, but kind of never sort of leave the project, since we're the person kind of from the beginning that is championing and kind of overseeing everything. So this is a beautiful flow chart that Taya made. And no, Hannah Montana is not an Elektra artist, but we love her, so we got together and face there. So the A&R is interacting with all of these sorts of branches that she laid out here: producers, co-writers, mix engineers, publishers, to get the songs to the best possible place that they can sound and be. And then once that's finished, whether it's, you know, and we're working in tandem with the product manager constantly. Like, for example, we just had a Chloe feature come out last week with a band called Ex Lovers, and that was not in the cards until their team emailed me 2 months ago and was like, hey, can we get Chloe on this song? And I called my product manager and I was like, we got to figure out some space for the song. So we're working really closely in forming the timeline, the calendar for each artist together as an A&R and a product manager, to just make sure everything is set up properly. So I'm over here working to make the music great with the artists, working with producers, setting them up with co-writers. Once the song's done, we'll go into mixing, which I'll get into on the next flow chart. That's on the next slide. That's how I made. And then once that's all great, I hand it over to my product manager, who's going to sort of see it through on the marketing side, on everything from digital to publicity to touring to creative services and radio, and just sort of package the songs, the album, the EP in its best possible way and how the artist kind of wants it done. So we sort of really work synergistically to get everything delivered as you see it, you know, album artwork, videos, the song. We're working really, really closely together on everything. So, you know, a lot of artists come in with projects sort of finished, whether it's an EP or an album, but we wanted to kind of walk through the process of the creation of a song from session to master. So, you know, a large part of my job is setting up writing sessions every day for my artists. I run their Google calendars of writing sessions, and basically, you know, no one artist is the same. Some people want to write every day. Some people want to write a few times a week. Some people want writing camps where they're writing for 2 weeks at a time and then they have breaks. So, you know, you get with your artist, you figure out what they're comfortable with, and then you sort of feel out with publishers and songwriter managers, producer managers about scheduling sessions. So for me, it's all about, you know, the right fit for an artist in terms of artistic vision. Like, okay, do they have a similar, you know, sense of concept? Are they going to bring out, you know, a certain kind of melody out of, you know, my artists that sometimes they struggle with? Like, I try to sort of pair people that I think will be a good fit for them. And obviously, especially with my younger artists, I think they love working with people that have worked on songs that they admire. I think everybody does. So definitely, you know, working with them to find the best producers and writers. And then from there, we get demos. And my approach is always collect a bunch of demos and then zoom out and sort of see what's worth moving forward with. I think sometimes when you go through the writing process, some things kind of naturally fall into a cohesive project. So I work with an artist named Sebastian Javier that I'm developing on the Latin pop side, and we probably have over like 120 songs at this point, but we had written a bunch, and it was funny because one day him and I just went through and listened to everything, and we naturally had like 7 songs that felt like an EP, and those are kind of the songs that we are now moving forward with to mix. But before we mix, we go super back and forth on the songs and get them the best possible. So whether that's, you know, making a guitar loop sound a bit different, you know, I've said everything from like, can you make it sound more glittery, to can you make it sound like it's in a hollow room, can you make it sound like it's underwater? Like, I say crazy things all the time, and just really working to bring out the feeling of a song, whether that's stripping it back a ton or adding drums or fixing the way a bridge sounds, or enhancing a pre-chorus melody, or any of that. You know, I think every song, no one song's the same, so everything kind of needs different love and care. And I have my artists very involved in this. So, you know, they're normally in a group chat with me and the producer, and we're all going back and forth, or we're on an email thread, and we get the songs to what I normally call like final production. And then after the final production, we move it to mixing, which is just getting everything to be mixed, you know, to the best of its ability to make it sound the best. You know, some mixes need a really intense bass, some need a vocal super brightened up. You know, at this point, nothing's changing about the song except it's just trying to sound better. And we give feedback on that, and then we move into mastering, which mastering essentially allows a song to sound great on all, you know, ways you could listen to it, if that makes sense. So when you get a properly mastered song, it's going to sound great on your speakers, it's going to sound great in the car, it's going to sound good on headphones, it's going to sound good on the radio, it'll sound great on a TV. So mastering just sort of equalizes the song and allows it to feel good and finished and professional everywhere. So that's kind of the whole process. I mean, I feel like there's so many stories and so many ways that songs come to be. But I think what's really important to know about this is I'm just sort of the logistical person for this, but the artist is really the person that should be driving every point of this. You know, I'm going to help them with the emailing and the logistics and give my ideas and my opinions. And but you know, I think the best artists and the best bands are the people that know what they want from their songs and are driving that vision and leaning on their team when they need to. So I'm just along for the ride for these very talented people that I'm very lucky to work with. So yeah, I think that's the last slide.
Yeah. So obviously that was a lot of information really fast. We kind of just wanted to give you guys a glimpse into what we do being at a major label and how we find and interact with artists. But we'd love to open it up for questions if you guys do have any.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. Lots of good info. As I mentioned in the chat, in case you didn't, this is being recorded. It will get emailed out for our internal purposes here, so don't worry if you feel like you missed something, want to go back, you'll be able to do that. We did have some questions come through, so I'll just go through one by one and you guys just take them. I think you touched on a lot of these, but I think the thought is to maybe expand a little bit. So the first one was any easy way to market someone to a somewhat niche audience that they appeal to, so something that's maybe not as mainstream?
I think that, you know, there's no like one way to do that. I think that's a great thing, to be niche and to sort of cater to your audiences. I think it's important to find out where your fans live, whether that's Reddit or Twitter or, you know, I think TikTok, like there's different spots and pockets that your fans can live in. And especially if it's niche, like, you know that better than anybody else. So just leaning into the platforms and the places that you enjoy being on the internet, and really, you know, carving out a world for yourself there. Yeah, I mean, I think you can argue, like, I think some of the best things feel niche and then end up, you know, becoming mainstream. Like, I think Billie Eilish is a great example of an artist that 7 years ago people would have been like, this is weird and niche, I don't get it. And now she's like the biggest pop star in the world. So I think playing up to the things that your interests and what you enjoy is very important. But I don't know if there's one way to do it. I would just, you know, wear the clothes you like to wear, post them in the places you like to post, and make the songs you want to make. And I think that that in and of itself will get to the right people. Taya?
Yeah, I feel like that's exactly what, like, hit the nail on the head. The only thing I would add is I think it can also be really helpful to network with other artists who are kind of in the same space as you. So other artists who you feel like are at the same level, at the same place, the more you can get to know them, like, those people are going to be big drivers in your niche community too, because they're also going to be creating content in that space and liking and thinking about the same things that you are. So the more you can connect with those people, the more you'll have opportunities to collaborate and to find new audiences.
Awesome. So another one that came up was, if an artist has a demo, should they just put it out, even if it's not, you know, professionally mixed, mastered? Maybe, you know, the artist is doing it themselves. What advice would you have for someone that's maybe in that realm?
I think it depends on what your goals are. So if your goal is put something out, share it with the world, meet people, collaborate, like, accomplish one thing, baby steps, then I say, like, yes, do it. I know for me personally, like, the first song that I actually put up on Spotify suddenly made me realize, like, oh, I can just do this. Like, it's not a big deal to just do it. And it opens so many doors. Just, you start talking to more people and you start reaching people that you didn't know you were going to reach. But I think there's also something to be said for, once you do feel like you have your own sound and your own voice and you've figured that out, I think from a label perspective, it does look much better when you can see that clear and tight brand. And so what I've seen a lot of artists do is, if they were releasing a lot of demos under a project or a name, whatever, and they were kind of finding their sound and on that journey, they'll then pick a new name, start a new brand as an artist, and really put the honed version out there and have that be like the professional one that they're putting all their time and energy into.
Awesome. Thank you. So a couple questions came up kind of about the industry itself. So I'll kind of combine these two. They're similar. Both of you talk a little bit about your past experience in the industry? Was working in A&R always your main goal? And what, like, skills, knowledge, experience do you recommend if someone would like to pursue a career in A&R? And I think there was someone who's a college student looking to gain experience. So what advice would you offer?
Yeah, I can definitely say I did not know even what A&R was till I was like 20. So very normal and very much not something I knew was even a job. So I knew I wanted to work in the music business once I got to college. So I've been interning since I was like 17 in the music industry. And that's my biggest piece of advice, is if you haven't already, just go and do it. Like, start emailing people, start looking locally wherever you live. At, you know, if there's any managers that live in your town. I would normally say venues, but, you know, it's a bit weird of a time for live shows. But just get involved with your local community. Figure out if a band you like that, you know, you used to see at shows all the time in your college or in your local area, like, needs a manager, and just start managing them. Even if you don't know what you're doing, that's fine. Most of us still don't know what we're doing. Just get involved. And my path, just like the super Spark Notes version, is I was interning all of college. I went to UT Austin, so I was interning all over kind of the Austin music scene, and then I was booking a bunch of shows, and I ended up interning at CAA, which is a major agency, in their touring department, thinking I wanted to be an agent. And all I would do is pitch bands to the agents, and they were like, "I think that you're an A&R person," and so they kind of encouraged me to look into labels as a career, and ended up meeting somebody at the agency that introduced me to Taya and I's boss, who runs Elektra. So I kind of got there by way of finding out what I didn't like, which is my second piece of advice, is say yes to everything, do everything, and kind of figure out where your skill set lies and where your passions lie. Because it's where your skill set and your passions meet in the middle that you're going to be the best at that job. And for me, I knew that I needed to be somewhere that allowed me to be creative, but also allowed me to sort of be organized and get my ducks in a row, because those are things that I'm good at on like a logistical level. And I think A&R is a good kind of meet in the middle for that. So my advice would be just go out there, put yourself out there, start to help people say yes to everything, and don't be too super pigeonholed. You should have goals and dreams, but I think if I had been like A&R or bust from like 18, I would have not been where I am. I think that you have to be open-minded. And there's so many things that you can do in this industry, from being a publicist to being, somebody that works in like video department, or you could be a manager. Like there's so many things you can do. So just be keeping an open mind and knowing that you'll fall into the right place is kind of the long version. But Taya.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, my path into the music industry was very different. And one thing that I would say, well, I guess I'll tell my path first. So I've always obviously been a big music fan and a musician myself too. And in college, I was a part of my college's radio station. So I was plugged into music that way and had friends who were super involved in doing internships at the time. But in school, I was actually majoring in math, economics. So obviously like the opposite of what you would think of as a person who's going to go into a music job. And so when I was doing internships and trying to find things, I rarely found a job that was an analytics job within the music industry. And so I kind of just wrote it off and was like, okay, I guess I'm not going to do that because I need to get work experience that relates to my major, or else why am I doing this major? And so when I graduated, my first job was actually in advertising, what everybody dreams of doing. And I got a ton of experience on the data and analytics side there, and kind of moved up into a data science role. And then once I had that data science experience and I felt confident that like, okay, I know how to do this thing that pretty much every business needs, that's when I started looking for jobs in music again. And when I found out what A&R research actually was, and it turned out to be the perfect fit, kind of like Kat said, for somebody with a background in data and music, since it is kind of like part browsing and listening and part just hard numbers. But I think what Kat said really resonates the most, because especially having not worked in the music industry and then coming straight into this role, it made me realize how different the music industry is than any other industry, and how complex it is. And there are so many different things you can do within music, and they have completely different skill sets, completely different day-to-days, completely different sub-networks. And so the more people you can meet who do those different things, the more you'll start to understand how it all fits together. And the more you'll be able to navigate it yourself as an artist, but then also as an employee, to figure out where you fit and where it makes sense. Because obviously all of you guys are here because you love music. And I think that's the one thing that unites everybody who works in the music industry. So if you like genuinely love music and it's what you want to do, there's definitely a role for you and a place for you. And it's just about trying everything until you figure out which one it is. Oh, you're on mute, Kat.
Sorry, I just want to say, if A&R is your ultimate goal, my boss always tells me something that frustrates me, but he's very right. He always says, if you want to do A&R, find something great, like find something amazing, and believe in it, and tell people about it. And even if they have no followers and no songs out, and it's special, then fight for it. And I think A&R is a business of giving your opinion, and it's something that is very hard and there's mostly women in this room. So for women, we're told that our opinion doesn't matter as much for some reason. And so really overcoming that sort of stigma we built in ourselves, that what we like to listen to isn't cool, isn't good, when most crowds of major shows is all young girls. So I think that they pretty much know, what's cool. So pay attention to your instincts and find something great and believe in it is definitely, and not be afraid to talk about it is definitely my biggest piece of advice for like someone who's young and wants to pursue A&R. Because You know, if let's say you find something on Instagram or YouTube that's special, and you become very close with that artist because you reached out on them early, and then 6 months later every label in the world's emailing you, like you're that person that they're going to trust and that they believed in first. So and I've seen people get A&R roles just from those kind of stories. So yeah, just wanted to say that you can be a self-starter and find things on your own.
Awesome. And I'd love to just touch on, there's a question about songwriters. So if someone is not the artist themselves looking to necessarily pitch, any advice for songwriters? Should they be pitching songs? Should they be trying to find someone to record a demo and get that out? Like if they don't have the same following as, say, an artist that's trying to build their branding, any thoughts on that or down that road?
I mean, a lot of my friends who are songwriters do still try to build a following. It just looks really different. So like posting, if you're writing a song, you're probably writing on guitar, piano, whatever, or maybe you're producing it, but whatever you're doing, like sharing that. And this sounds obvious and dumb, but using hashtags, I have been so shocked when you post a song that you've written and you use hashtags, like somebody will probably find it. And the more you do it, the more that will happen. So like one example is I have a good friend who's a songwriter who decided she was just going to post a song every day for 30 days. And by the end of it, she had somebody who did work at an indie label reach out to her and say, can you send me all of your demos? So that's a good example of just like, do it, be consistent. Don't be shy about saying that's what you're trying to do. Because there are people out there looking.
Yeah, I mean, I think that songwriter, it's a different ball game, and like I'm not a publishing A&R, so I can't speak to that side of things as much, but you know, I've gotten cold songwriters sending me like, hey, I wrote a song, I think it'd be great for band Camino, and I have no idea who they are, and I will always listen to it. So for me, it's like I'm probably more inclined to listen to a songwriter sending me a song that they specifically hear for one of my acts. So I think just like a little bit of a hustle, trying to figure out who the point of contact could be. If like, let's say you write a song and you think it'd be a killer song for, you know, a specific artist, I think that's a more sort of way to get someone's ears on a song as a songwriter. But yeah, I think it goes the same that for what Taya said earlier about just like meeting fellow songwriters and getting in those rooms, because you never know, you may do a session with somebody who really takes to your skills and is like, I think you should meet my friend who's this producer, and then that producer has a big time manager, and it's like, you should hear this person I wrote with last week, and then that's kind of how it happens. Like the stories I've heard the most are just like through just sessions that ended up, you know, going really well, and people just talking about, because the songwriter community is very tight knit, and I just think meeting people and working with like-minded people is definitely the move.
Yeah, and that reminds me too, if you're not, which I think many of you probably are, but if you're not already a member of a performing rights organization, so like an ASCAP or a BMI, make sure that you join one of those and that you're going as much as possible to their networking events. I think a lot of them are on pause right now with COVID, but I'm sure they're probably doing some virtual things too. I've heard from a lot of experienced songwriters that the biggest way they made connections and ended up in bigger rooms was through people they met at either ASCAP or BMI or CSAC. I always forget the other one.
Awesome, thank you. Let's see if I missed any. I'm sorry if I missed your question. There were quite a few. Touched on a lot of this, which is great. Oh, there was a question, bands that you work with or artists that you work with, I think specifically to Kat, in addition to the ones that you mentioned, Chloe, Camino. So that's all in the presentation too that we'll send. But that might be in terms of maybe wanting to send something.
I work with an artist, Bryn Cartelli, who won The Voice at 14. She's 17 now. She's releasing solo music that she wrote. That's amazing, early next year. And then I'm working with a developing Latin pop artist that I mentioned in the presentation named Sebastian Javier that will also launch early next year. So in addition to Chloe and Camino, that's my roster, Bryn and Sebastian.
Awesome. While we wait and see if there's any other questions for all of our participants here, thank you so much. In an effort to sort of consolidate any information, we have a little form here that you'll be able to, if you'd like to submit a song or pitch a song, we're actually just going to collect all that information on a Google form. So I will drop that in the chat as well while we see if there's any other questions. That way everything gets contained and our wonderful presenters do not get inundated since they have already told you to go spread the love elsewhere. So let's see if there's anything else. Any other questions about anything in the industry? Anything for our panelists specifically? Yes, thank you, Casey. I knew I missed one from you. If an artist has really good songs and songs that they're working on but are underdeveloped, we might need some clarification on that. Maybe don't have a brand or a following. How likely are you to sign someone like that versus a more developed artist? I know you touched on kind of both, Kat, so like what is the breakdown there that you see?
I think there's no like one size fits all approach. We work with an artist named Livingston who came to us with a very special EP that one of the A&Rs have found and didn't really have anything surrounding him, and we sort of built it from the ground up. But yeah, I think even though he was, didn't have a brand or a following, he had a 25-page Google Doc that he had made for us with what he wanted to look like and what he wanted to wear and what he wanted his, everything to be. So I think that having a strong vision and also embracing that your journey is not anybody else's. And I think, like Taya said, like any moment that you can spend worrying about getting signed is a moment that you can spend developing who you are as an artist and working on yourself and your songs and what you put out in the world. So I think it's more about developing who you are and then having people kind of knock on your door versus seeking someone to develop you. Of course, like a team and help is awesome, but I think it's more important about like focusing on yourself and your project and how you want to present yourself to the world musically and creatively is the most important thing. And that looks different for everybody. But, someone like Chloe is all about like colors and eyeshadow and, whatever. That's who she is. Like, that's genuinely who she is. She showed up to the studio the other day on Zoom. I like had her, she was cutting vocals and she was wearing elf ears. And she was like, I wore elf ears today. Like, I'm just like, there's nobody here watching this. Like, she's just who she is. So like, be yourself. And I know it sounds like a broken record, but yeah, I think that if you feel underdeveloped, it's probably because you are, and that's a sign that you should work on yourself. Like, not a sign that what you're doing is not great. It's that you just need more time to grow in your music and what you want to put out in the world is kind of my advice. But everyone's story is different.
Awesome. And there was a question from Irene here. So, and I'm going to rephrase this a little bit, Irene, in terms of how involved are you as an A&R leading up to an album and the marketing strategy? So, for instance, she says, what would the timeline be for 3 single releases and then the album? So how is that working with the team and how involved is an A&R in that process, I think is a better question.
Right. We're very involved because obviously it's our job to get the songs finished to be put out in time. So we're super involved. Like I said earlier, with that chart that Taya made with the product manager and the A&R person, we're constantly speaking, constantly editing the timeline. And to answer your question, Irene, like there's no one way release strategy. Like, and if anything, streaming completely changed the way that release strategy works. I think the more unique the release strategy, the better. I think the more conventional you are nowadays kind of shoots you in the foot. I think you want to be unique. There's no like, I think sometimes you want to not release so many singles so that you can let people enjoy an album. And I think that there's no kind of, again, one size fits all approach. I think it's what your overall project sounds like and what you want people to hear first and how you want to divide, that and how you want people to find you. For example, like Chloe, we released Manta Rays in March and then, or was it April? I think April. I can't remember. We released Manta Rays a few months back. We released I Want to Be With You in August. her next single will come November 13th. And then there won't be an album until April. So, you know, that's almost a year-long release plan for a record. My biggest advice is just to plan 8 to 12 months in advance of what you want to do. You know, having a plan is always the best thing. What that plan looks like, I can't, you know, speak to. I think every artist is different, but just sitting down and really feeling like, how do people want to, you know, what's my 8 to 12 month plan of my release strategy and what I want to do. If that helps at all. Less my world, but we do work closely on the release plans with our marketing people.
Awesome. And we touched on this throughout, but any like big mistakes, red flags you see people making in terms of what might stop an A&R from reaching out to a certain artist, or something you see that is kind of a no-go?
Don't buy anything. Don't buy followers. We can tell. Don't buy followers.
Kaya, that's so funny. That's the first thing I thought of too.
Yeah,
don't buy followers. Don't buy anything suspicious looking. We can tell right away. Like, don't buy views. Don't buy anything. Like,
it's so obvious. Like, we look at the organic artists every day, and when somebody buys them, like, you can just tell.
I'd rather your Instagram say 530 followers and 100 likes than 20K followers and 100 likes. Like, that does not make me get excited about, you know, an artist. I want to see like a real person.
Yeah, and if you were going to spend money on something like that, like, spend it on new gear, a new instrument, or on submitting to blogs, or like something with a little more creative meat behind it instead.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't even think about that. That makes total sense. Someone said 50K followers with 20 likes. Oh my gosh.
And we're like, well, we know what happened there.
The research doesn't lie. That's awesome. And then there's a question. I'm just going to kind of broaden it. Are you both like exclusive to the label? Are you able to take on your own projects? There's a question about like a specific project someone is working on, but do you go outside of the label? Are you allowed to? Do you stick with just who you're involved with at Elektra?
I'm focused on like my Elektra roster personally, just like because I feel like that's where my energy needs to be the most spent with like my artists at the label. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, is working with the label and the artists that are there.
Yeah, that's generally where I land too, especially since what I do is so niche with the data stuff. I mean, always happy to answer questions or chat with people over Instagram though, if there's just like little things. Like, I talk to friends who are artists or friends of friends all the time about release strategies and things like that. So feel free to message me.
Awesome. Yeah, and please drop your socials in the chat so that everyone can connect with our wonderful presenters. Thank you so much for your time and energy. This is super informative. I think we got to just about every question. Sorry if I missed it. I think a lot was covered in the presentation. And again, we are dropping the form if you are interested in actually like submitting a song, pitching a song. Through the form, Kat and Taya will have access to it, so they will be able to review. Just a way to kind of collect everything so that we know it's from this particular group. So you attended this webinar and you have something that you'd like to submit for consideration. So you know, there's no guarantees, but if you want to try to get your stuff out there in that way, you're welcome to do that. But please also drop your socials and where we can find you and your brand and your identity in the chat as well. So I think that's it. I think we wrapped everything. Thank you both so much for sharing all this wonderful insight with us. And thank you all for attending this session. Be on the lookout for the recording so you can compare to your notes. And Women Crush Music is still on tour. So this was part of our virtual tour. So be sure to connect with Women Crush on socials to see where we're going next, which is Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia, where we will have a showcase of artists as well as another webinar. So keep up with that. And then we have a few more city stops before the end of the year. So thank you again to our presenters, and thank you to everyone for attending. Have a wonderful rest of your day, rest of your week. Be well and take care. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So nice meeting you guys.
Thanks.